I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into the world of Christian evangelism with Charlie Liebert, author of an amazing book. It is called Always Be Ready to Give an Answer. This compelling guide is perfect for anyone looking to share their faith confidently, even when faced with tough questions. Discover how to transform fear into fearless conversations about the gospel. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing transformative book. The links are below this interview. Charlie, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. It's good to be here.
Let's start out with a little bit about yourself and your background. Tell us a little bit about your journey in Christianity and your journey in life.
Okay, I grew up in a small town on Long Island called Amityville. You've probably heard of it.
Amityville Horror, everybody has, right?
I lived actually 4 blocks from that house.
Wow.
But I grew up there. I graduated high school, went to college, got an associate degree, went to work in the chemical industry.
Mm-hmm.
During the course of the next 35 years, I had 13 different careers.
Mm-hmm.
But at age 70, after I'd retired and worked for a while, for instance, in Genesis, I decided I wanted to go out on my own and undertake work as an author.
Mm.
So that's 13 years ago. I'm 83 now.
Wow. Well, you don't look 83, so you've been living the right life for sure. I thought
and
you had just gotten into it if you were started at 70, because you look
No.
about a decade and a half younger than you are. So that's wonderful. So you had kind of this diverse background of a multitude of jobs, and then you said, let me be a writer.
Let me be a
And
writer.
what kind of writing did you do? Tell us about your writing career.
It came out of, I was a member of Christian businessmen in North Carolina, in Greensboro, where I was living at the time. And I was teaching a class on evangelism. And a problem kept coming up. The problem of, I'm ready to talk to someone about Christ. And he asked me a question. And I get stumped by the question. I never get to my evangelism. I never get there. I get sidetracked. And I heard that again and again. I finally said, I got to address that. And I asked the question, what would Jesus do? But before I do that, let me just talk a little bit more about my writing career, okay? That's the first book I wrote. Since then, at this point, 13 years later, I've got 25 books on Kindle.
Wow.
And not all the Christian genre, about half of them Christian genre. Some is my family history, and there's some related to a couple of works of fiction I did. But the Christian genre is the main one. Now, that's another journey I've got to just touch on. And that is, until I was 35, I was a hardcore atheist. I grew up in the church. At 16, left for the perceived hypocrisy that I saw. I sat there one Sunday morning seeing the people all nodding as the preacher preached against alcohol, knowing they'd all been at the opening the night before and huge amounts of liquor had been consumed. So I dropped out 16-year-old. By the time I was in my 20s, I was hardcore atheist. I remember sitting in the bar in New Jersey in the Meadowlands talking about how they couldn't not be a God. Impossible. Mm. Well, at 35, I married a Catholic girl. We moved to North Carolina, had 2 children, and my life was starting to come apart. The combination of alcohol, pornography, all kinds of other sin that had intervened was taking me down. And I knew it, and I was always a control freak. I couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, everything was coming apart. Well, a friend said, let's go to a retreat weekend. We went out to Asheville, North Carolina. A retreat, actually an Episcopalian retreat. And for the first time, my ears were open to hear the gospel. I'd heard it before. In fact, when I was on my knees, when I came to Christ in the chapel, I remembered 2 things. One of my friends from high school who witnessed to me, and another fellow that had, we drank beer together, drinking beer and watching TV and watching Billy Graham. Making fun of it, but God's word comes back. Yeah, it always returns. So I became a Christian at 35. My wife was shocked. She would become to Christ 3 months later. So our marriage would begin to be healed rather than severed, which was where it was heading. So that was the beginning. Then I came to that point where I was lecturing those men and said, I have to write a book. So my first question was, well, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus confront that kind of a problem? And if you look at the scripture, what you see is what? He would not answer the question. He'd ask another question. That was his approach. Okay, you can see that again with the Pharisees a number of times. So that book began the journey. Now, let me summarize the journey, and then we'll get to the book itself. After I wrote that book, my friend said, "You've now got the strategy. Answer the questions." So the second book is 107 questions Christians get asked. And then the third book is a critique of Darwinism, which is currently being negotiated to sale by a publisher called Without Three Miracles, Darwin's Dead. And then there's a series of other books. One relates to my son took his own life by suicide in 22 in March. And there's a book about suicide and a book about what I call Job's Choice, which is when a Christian faces crisis, what do you do? Do you run to God or do you run away from God? So, and then finally, the last one that I just published about a month ago is, you're going to laugh at this one. Atheism is an oxymoron. That one is still going to get out there in publication. I don't know quite how that's going to do yet. Okay, so let's get to the book itself. The book is
sure.
Ready to give an answer. And we're focused on, in that book, we're focused on how do I get to evangelizing a person when he's taking me off track in all kinds of different ways, like asking questions and stuff. And the book the first half of the book contains background. Basically says, what are the questions? You know, one of the most common questions Christians get asked is, where did Cain get his wife? Have you heard that before? Yeah. That comes up all the time, right? Yeah. There's a simple answer to that question, but most Christians don't have the answer. So they get stumped by it and they don't go on. So I have a chapter on common questions. And then you question, what's their motivation? And this is where you ask the question that Jesus would ask. Why did you ask me that question? Why do you want to know the answer to that? And that's what I call taking their spiritual temperature. You're going to see how they respond, okay? Now, they're going to respond in one of three different ways. They're going to respond cold and say, oh, I think Christian's just stupid, and I don't think you can answer it. That's one response. One is, that's a question I've wondered about, but I never have gotten a decent answer. And the other one is when a person says, yeah, well, if you answer that question, I think I'll understand the gospel. So you've got to take a spiritual temperature. That's the essence of the heart of the book here. But before we get there, we have to understand the world religions. And there's a whole chapter on that. Because of all the world religions there are, there's really only three possibilities. There's no God at all. There's a God, and you can get to him by doing something. And there's the only view, the Christian is the only view that says you can't get to God. God has to reach down to you. It's through Christ that you get to God, not through anything you can do. And that's uniquely different than all other religions. That's why the gospel is so critical to give to the world around us. So you're going to take their spiritual temperature. You're going to ask them a question. Why did you ask me that? Why do you want to know the answer to that? And then you listen to what they have to say. They can say things like, I don't care. I just want to take you off track. You know, basically, I'm taking you away from track. I'm taking you off track or whatever. So you take the spiritual temperature, and then you always, and the book makes this point three different ways, always give your personal testimony. The reason for that is simple, okay? It's what happened to me. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you what happened to me. And I'll practice that in just a second. And in telling you what happened to me, you hear the gospel, but you hear it not in a confrontational way, but in an interactive way. And I say like as I said before earlier, my life was coming apart. Things were not going well at all. And I was confronted. I came to the gospel and I got on my knees in Asheville and I confessed Christ. I said, God, if you're really real, and I wasn't sure he was, you could have my life. And he took it. Back to Greensboro, my wife looked at me and said, something happened to you. And I had no clue. It took me about a year to sort it out. Understand I'd been born again. It took a while because it didn't really have a lot of that knowledge in my head. But it took but then, of course, Christ grew us up in Christ. Grew us up very quickly by taking us to South Carolina. So the point is to get to your testimony. And my testimony simply is that my life was coming apart. I came to a position where I related directly to God, to Jesus Christ, received his blessing in terms of the salvation he offers through his shed blood, and was transformed. And that transformation changed everything. Changed my relationship to my wife, changed my relationship to the world around me, changed everything. But you've got to put that testimony in a form that they can receive it. That's why you took their temperature before.
Mm.
If the guy's cold, you're going to kind of do it in a standoffish way, kind of
Right.
back up a little bit, okay? If the guy is almost ready to receive the gospel in some form, then you're going to be a little more aggressive with it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It depends upon how you want to present that testimony. So the testimony is very important to do in that way. And the book also contains a bunch of biblical support talking about Paul's missionary journeys and things like that relate to that directly. But the point here is what's the evangelism strategy? The strategy is simple. When you are confronted with a stopping point, ask the question,
Mhm.
why'd you ask me? Probe that with whatever they say, just keep probing it.
Yes.
Get down to the nitty-gritty of what's their spiritual condition. Are they cold? Are they hostile to the gospel? Are they ready to receive the gospel? Or someone lays in between? And then at that point, always you give a testimony.
I think that's great advice, because some people are just looking to debate you. Some people are just
Right.
looking to challenge you. Other people are truly seeking answers. And until you know what that person who is asking you the question wants, you can't really give them the appropriate response. So I think that's a great tactic.
I've done everything from I've had some hardcore atheists just come to my website every once in a while,
Mhm.
and they always go away angry because what I simply say is you can't be an atheist.
Yeah,
You can't know that there is no God. You can say I believe there's no God, but that's a matter of faith. And
exactly.
they get really angry about that, accusing them
Exactly.
of faith. You know,
If you have to prove there is a God, they have to prove there is no God. And I
exactly.
think your proof is abundant by looking around at the beauty of nature, the beauty of people, the beauty of this world. I think there are a multitude of answers that will let you know there is a God. And then drilling down beyond that for sure. I think it's also important that you are an atheist.
Yes,
The people who come to you who are atheists realize that they're not talking to somebody who has been brainwashed since they were a child, but somebody who found Jesus later on.
I understand the other side. I was there, and I understand it. That's why the book I just published, Atheist is an Oxymoron, hits it hard. Because what I say there basically is you can't be an atheist because you can't know for certain there is no God.
Yeah.
The best you can be is an agnostic.
Hmm.
I don't know and I don't care. But
Yeah.
you can't really be an atheist. And that really makes them very angry.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Let me ask you this, Charlie. What's the most challenging question you faced about Christianity, and how did you respond? Or maybe there's a category that you often get asked.
I'm thinking about that. It has to
I know
do.
the one question always comes to mind for me that's a tough question about Christianity, and I have my answer, but it's like, why do bad things happen to good people? That's a fundamental question people often have as well, right?
Yeah. How can I guess the most difficult question is I'm pretty good, you know. I'm not that bad. I never killed anybody. I didn't commit adultery, so you know I should be able to get squeak by into heaven. You know that's the most common thing I encounter in this culture. Is
Yeah.
I'm kind of good enough. In fact, I saw a movie just the other day, Time Changer, and one of the characters in there does exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm good enough. I never killed anybody. I didn't, I'm not bad. I should be able to pass the bar.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
not, that's not true.
Charlie, we're down to our last minute. Before we leave you, I want to see if there's anything else you want to add, anything you want the folks at home to know about your book, and what the takeaway is for them.
Okay. To know about the book is this is a strategy for you to overcome that stumbling to get to evangelize your friends and your family. That's the purpose. It's available on Amazon along with all my other stuff. It's all there on Amazon, ready to go.
And you
And
mentioned you had a website as well. Do you want to give us
yes, the
that?
website, I got two websites. One is
Okay.
authorcharlieliebert.com and the other is sixdaycreation.com.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you
And
can reach
that's
out to
six,
Charlie
six is
there.
spelled out, SIX, yeah.
Okay, you can reach out to Charlie on either of those websites. The links for his books are below this interview. The name of the book we've been focusing on today is Always Be Ready to Give an Answer. It is a compelling guide that is perfect for anyone looking to share their faith confidently, even when faced with tough questions, you will discover how to transform fear into fearless conversations about the gospel. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. Great to have you.
Great to have you on the show. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time until next time on Spotlight.